folks, and welcome back to the Books and Fantastical Wigs channel. If you're new, my name is Shri, and today I wanted to discuss 5 reasons why I got back into reading. And I think this might resonate with a lot of your journeys. Accompanying our book chat today is this sandalwood-scented, lost in the pages candle that I hand-poured myself. If you're interested in bringing some of this bookish coziness to your space or bookstore, you can find the links in my description box below. If you were anything like me, you grew up an avid reader from a young age and were obsessed with all the worlds you entered. You read in the mornings, before school, under your desk at school, while eating, and maybe you sacrificed your social life to just sit in a corner and read. During different parts of my childhood, I loved series such as The Magic Treehouse, The Nancy Drew Mysteries, Goosebumps, Junie B. Jones, Ramona, absolutely loved Delta Request, Percy Jackson, and several more absolutely wonderful stories I cannot think of right now. However, this phase quickly ended as I fell deeper into school. That's not to say I didn't enjoy some of the required reading growing up. In fact, stories like Fahrenheit 451, Animal Farm, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein, and other required readings were also incredibly formative to who I am today. I truly am deeply appreciative of some of these experiences, which mostly made reading feel like a chore at the time, unfortunately. However, I distinctly recall only 3 titles I read during college. I did not read at all for like 4 years following graduation though. My true passion, craze, obsession, whatever you want to call it, that feeling you get when you're like super engrossed in a book that you really love, that ended when I entered high school as I grew a social life of my own. Part of my reasons for getting back into reading is for the pure nostalgia, to be able to completely fall in love with my favorite stories again. I wanted to bring it back into my life. Anyways, this is a long recap of my reading journey so far, but let's get into 5 reasons I started reading again. Number 1, it helps declutter my mind. I'm not sure if you resonate with this, but sometimes my head feels so loud, and I think this might be due to the information overload caused by social media nowadays. I mean, if we set reading aside for a second, I gotta say, I can totally see why YouTube long-form content is making a comeback. At this point, I like listening to one person talk and ramble about one topic for an extended period of time, or watch other cozy creators do a study with me session for 2 hours straight. Music content creators posting an hour-long ambient video with their mellow and relaxing music for us to just journal, read, do household tasks, and live more mindfully. Those are just a few examples. But I don't think I'm alone. Now, I'm gonna come back from my tangent and back to reading. When I'm feeling overwhelmed or overloaded, opening up a physical book and entering a fictional world just shuts my mind up instantaneously. I love it. We're not doom scrolling posts while we search for the next hit of dopamine. I'm not saying that because reading isn't enjoyable, but you just know the difference between the constant, endless search for the hits of pleasure versus making your way through a good story. My brain isn't trying to hold 10,000 things in it simultaneously after just scrolling through 100 posts. When we actually get into a good book, one would hope you would have just that one story you are reading on your mind. The book itself doesn't even have to be good if you like it, at least for the purpose of decluttering your mind. In addition to helping my mind feel less cluttered, the second reason is that reading expands vocabulary. I truly believe the reason I was able to enter the spelling bee each year with no prep is because of my constant reading. Now, I sometimes like to look up definitions and read the words back within the context of a book. I used to rely too heavily on context clues, and after hearing about the study done on college students studying English lit and their astonishing comprehension of Charles Dickens, I myself tried to just read the first paragraphs of the excerpts given in that study and used all the resources available to me. And although my comprehension, I believe, was adequate since I could identify the court setting and the descriptions of the horrible rainy London weather, there was no way I could have identified the setting in just the first paragraph using context clues if I didn't look up what I didn't know. I didn't have the knowledge to be able to do so. So yes, I am intentionally trying to look things up that I don't know in reading to better my comprehension, and that includes vocabulary. The reason I do this is because I can totally feel my range of vocabulary being shot. I think it's not out of the ordinary for a person's vocabulary and speaking patterns to change a bit depending on the phase of life that they're in, and expectedly, the language I used when I was an avid reader in elementary school versus when I was preparing for the SATs and taking English classes in high school versus when I was mostly taking engineering, math, and science courses in college I am sure was at least slightly varied just based on the different exposure I was getting. All of those likely differ from how I speak now, as someone who frankly hasn't socialized with English-speaking people beyond my work-from-home job since graduating in 2021. Truth be told, my vocabulary range has never been so limited, and I have noticed a significant change. Since I got back into reading just over a year ago, the range has improved to some extent, though it is not yet where it previously was. I find being able to articulate thoughts and communicate them effectively works like a muscle. Use it or lose it. Of course, for that you would also need a good attention span that doesn't break mid-sentence or mid-conversation, which brings us to the next benefit I see with reading: attention span. Short-form content has decimated my attention span, to the point that, combined with my lack of socialization for over a year during social distancing, I caught my attention sometimes breaking before I even completed a sentence. Now that's terrifying and difficult to admit. I am not sure if my attention span is just preserved by reading, or if it will be able to further improve with a combination of lifestyle changes, which I have yet successfully to implement. I do think attention did improve to some extent since I'm able to read a lot longer without unknowingly drifting into other thoughts. Despite it being anecdotal, I attribute my improvement to the reading since my lifestyle otherwise did not change. Reading inadvertently also replaces some of the time I spend doom scrolling or with more attention-robbing, brain-rotting hobbies. For this reason alone, I say if you like books that are poorly written and you're just getting back into reading like I still feel I am, go for it. As you read more, the more you might want to branch out on your interests, the more you might notice inconsistencies in the text, the more you might want to challenge yourself. I mean, I am embarrassed with where I started reading, but I know I shouldn't be. The first set of books I got was from my husband 2 years ago while I was playing Disney Dreamlight Valley, and mentioned the Disney Villain series would be interesting to read so I could attach more backstory in my head to the characters that were in my gameplay. Now, I did get through the first few books and could already see how relaxed I felt after reading during my lunch breaks, and afterwards I needed to get stories that were rated for kids older than 12. Like, there's a good chance that you want to explore more. The point is, if you just want to get back into reading after years, it does not matter if what interests you is not what you think should interest you. It does not matter if what interests you is not challenging you right now. Do it for your attention span, if not anything else, and build from there if you like. Let's hold on to our minds in this crazy world where everything and everyone is competing for our attention. And this leads us to reason 4. Reading gives us the opportunity to learn and think deeply. It is crazy how much of my learning I outsourced. It is easier than ever to just pull up ChatGPT and look up answers to questions I have, ideas, how-tos, and it's honestly sad how thinking is being outsourced so much that we cannot take a moment to truly grapple with a question and get from point A to point B in reasoning out our answer. Chances are you are probably fighting a similar internal battle. Reading is not the only avenue to seize the opportunity to learn or reflect deeply, but it is one of the ways, and it's the way that I find most enjoyable. Anyways, it is self-explanatory when someone says reading can teach you. You can learn about a culture, a time period, literal subject matter, in and outside of this world, depending on what you're reading, including in fiction. So I will be touching more on deep thinking. When I was talking about attention span, yes, I said you could read any book. However, to challenge yourself is a different matter. It's not enough to consume one book after another, not retaining or reflecting on anything that's been read to carry it with you moving forward. Reading on its own can help with thinking deeply and drawing connections to real life. However, the way I have been able to exercise thinking deeply is by paying attention to the thoughts and feelings that I would normally let pass over me as I move to the next paragraph instead of expounding on them in a reading journal. I have only started being attentive and intentional with my reading just recently, but it helps with retention and makes the experience of having read that book significantly more enjoyable. And a reading journal has definitely helped with that. Not to mention I can always go back to it. Drawing real world connections, researching whatever piques your curiosity during your read, and diving deep into that rabbit hole, it is all good. In an age where literacy, I believe, is going down in the United States. In fact, it is incredibly important in my opinion. And last but not least, reading builds empathy. So there's definitely some nuance to this that I probably haven't fleshed out, but feel free to leave your thoughts below. Empathy is good. At the same time, how do we use it? Do we excuse bad behavior such as those in toxic male protagonists in some romantasy books? Do we end up thinking this behavior is okay because of the protagonist's traumatic pasts? sure, we enjoy these books anyways. And yes, I enjoy the romantasy genre as well. Do we then confuse what is acceptable in a real life relationship or real world interactions? It seems that it's also been an ongoing issue in the book community. Paradoxically, some of us empathize with these traumatized men, but then behave with zero self-awareness or empathy out in the real world with real people. I think that might come from mixing this call to empathize with an object of desire, but I'm not sure if that made sense. The other downside of having a lot of empathy is you end up empathizing so much that all you can think about every day is all the people suffering in the world right now, and to top it off, factory farming is still alive and cooking. Okay, I'm gonna move away from that though and talk about why empathy is good, because I am of the general opinion that empathy is vital for a compassionate and humane society. I live in the USA, and all I can say is a lot more of us could use a lot more empathy. Not just here, but around the world, of course. Reading helps us humanize people, albeit oftentimes fictional, but people that aren't us. We are put in so many scenarios where we live through someone else's lens. We live 1,000 lives, and I think this is also why it's so important to branch out and read diversely. It is easy to live in a society where you can so blatantly express disagreement with incredibly hurtful words. It is easy to live behind a screen and verbally attack, troll, rage bait, or bully others. The increased isolation, the increased entitlement, to want a village for yourself but not want to be a village for someone else, the increased indifference disguised as independence, I think, have done a disservice to society. And yes, I do think these factors come together to lead to a society that is indifferent to the difficulties of others as well. All of these factors, combined with decreasing literacy rates, I believe, makes it harder for us to empathize with our neighbors. That's not to say that people don't have good reason for isolating. I just believe that society is overcorrecting to tackle very valid issues. I feel like I'm going on another tangent that started with why I think building empathy is important, but I would like to end by saying this. In a world of short form content, informational overload, and increasingly indifferent people, I think reading helps, even if to keep your sanity. As a bonus reason, I think reading is fun once you really tap into what you enjoy. I feel a sense of nostalgia when I'm reading something I love, and it connects me with my inner kid. I am still discovering what I like or don't like with each book I read. It's a journey. If you're someone that just got back into reading after a long break, I would love to know your reasons.